and they don't mind giving us the middle finger because they're in the seat right now.
I get called a toxic male every day.
That's your hashtag.
I know we got to move on, but I got to tell the most interesting fact that I learned was from Jesse, believe it or not.
What?
Who told
Fact?
Steve Ducey's wife is the woman in the Hertz commercial who throws the keys to OJ.
Is that true?
Isn't that insane? It's insane!
Crazy.
She dodged a knife.
This is not just a stop for allergy meds. This is a great price on what you need.
Up next, should a mom have to trade sexy skirts for oversized shirts? 5 words. Mom's too hot for friends. All right, Dagan. A woman looking for advice online says her teenage son asked her to dress more modestly and stop wearing makeup because his friends think she's hot. The son is embarrassed by his mom's attractiveness. Is that really his mom's problem?
She said, I don't wear anything too flashy or revealing, but I do like to enhance my features with makeup. I'm guessing this mom dresses like a whore.
God.
And it is, like, I'm thinking what Jeff Bezos' soon-to-be ex-wife or future ex-wife dressed like at that White House shindig, where she's either got side cleavage, butt cleavage, or just the giant crevasse right in the front.
Yeah.
She's trying to act like, oh, it's my son's problem. I'm like, no, everybody is like hypnotized by your, you know. Again, I'm looking down to see if there are any like niblets of corn that fell down in there after dinner.
Julie, you know, I think we live in a different time than when I was growing up. I never noticed my friends' moms. Like, they were kind of a different species.
Yeah, but they wore mom jeans back then. That's why.
Oh, they didn't even have jeans.
Yeah, and there's social media
House
now.
coats.
And I think
It's a house coat
being
generation.
over 40 or 50 and being super hot on social media is all the rage. But I'm going to defend this mom. Only, I mean, she probably does dress like a whore, but like, what's wrong with that? I think more power to her as a mom who was fat as at some point in my life. I mean, I peed myself every time I laughed, sneezed, or like smelled something. And so like I went through, you know, I had 3 kids.
Yeah.
So I looked not so great naked. I don't know if you've ever imagined it, but it wasn't pretty. And
if I even answered that question, I would go to HR.
Yeah, that was the
I'd walk you in there. Let's go.
that's okay. Oh, I'll give you a
Like, hello, Tyrus. No, it's not me this time. It's him.
But I personally have done a little transformation of myself, and I actually, I finally have like I've lost 40 pounds.
Really?
I actually want to. Thank you. And I actually can see there's muscles under the layers of fat, like they call them 6-packs.
Yeah.
I've got like a 2-pack, but I'm working on it. So I
R.I.P.
actually want to start
2-pack.
dressing like a slut. That's what I'm trying to say. No offense, kids. Mommy's not sleeping around. She's just looking like a whore.
That's a great
So
T-shirt.
more power to her for being able to do that after giving birth to these little.
Yeah, no, that's an achievement. By the way, a lot of the moms are in their 30s. Maybe they're just dressing their age.
Listen, I get it's weird if your mom is stacked and your friend's mom's not, but Tyrus here for $1.99 a month. You can get bosoms, and your mom can be dressing like a slut too.
Love it.
We have to do
I am
this.
subscribing.
Do you know how much money we could make off? And also,
Forget the money, Gutfeld. How many lives we would change? And it's not just young girls. Some of you silver foxes in the crowd, ladies, let's get that sag up and get our brag on, okay?
This is going to end with Tyrus having a reality show in the Villages called Golden Girls Gone Wild.
First stop, Sag Harbor.
Hey!
Bang! Terrible terrible, terrible. Did you have hot moms when you were a child in the 60s?
Everyone watching will appreciate this. My friend Vinny's mom was hot, and this is the point I want to make to this kid, okay? If his mom starts covering up, those friends aren't coming over anymore, okay? Being a hot mom guy is like being a guy who suddenly has a car. You're attractive for reasons you aren't. But imagine the awkwardness of this conversation. Like, I felt awkward asking my mom for money for a baseball bat. Can you imagine being like, hey, can you put your tits away? You know? But I do relate because my son has asked me not to show so much of my breasts. I'm walking around. I'm working out.
I've got some nipple covers in my office. I'll listen.
He does. All right, we must move on. I think we really covered that. Coming up, our responses never fail when we answer viewer mail. We got time for, I think, one question from Boomer61 asks, what's the best decade for music and why?
Oh, I say 80s all day.
Jimmy, you will?
I actually like the 80s the best.
Why? Why?
Give it up for everybody over 45. Give it up for them. Because in all honesty, pop 40 in the 80s was integrated. So you might hear Run DMC, but then hear Madonna. I think it had more range. And I liked 80s hair bands, Poison, Def Leppard, Pour Some Sugar on Me.
Not
Come
tonight.
on. Well, yeah, right. Yeah, well, at their age, it's Pour Some Splenda. It's not even sugar. But I specifically liked 80s music, and I think it was also because the coming of age of MTV paralleled it with videos. I loved the Thriller video, right? That was amazing. Although, can we agree that looking back now, the most shocking part of the Thriller video is that Michael had a girlfriend? Anyway.
All right, Dagan.
The 70s.
What? Yeah.
Just the bands, not so much the genres of music, but the Allman Brothers and the band for me. But then also just the Stooges, punk.
Yeah, the 70s, you had metal, folk, and punk in 10 years.
And disco, and I
And
mean
disco.
good, and just the jams and funk of disco.
Yeah. Cyrus?
Oh, man, this is going to go over real good with this group. The 90s, but specifically, whoa, hey, I didn't say it yet. This is when gangster rap was born. NWA and Ice Cube, man, that was like, that's what when I started thinking, like, you could talk about stuff, I was like, I'm in it. I was down with it, and it was...
Julie?
I'm going with the 70s. It's all I listen to.
Yeah.
A little different music selections. I liked, like Christopher Cross, the Bee Gees.
Really?
Yeah, it's all I listen to. Yeah, I'm like a much older woman.
Did you hang around a lot of dental offices? Did you have a lot of work? Like when you were a kid? Yeah.
I also
A lot of
love
time in the elevator.
music.
Yeah.
I love elevator
You had a lot of
music. I love all of that.
orthodontry
It's also
work.
romantic.
It is romantic. I also feel that it was just much easier to be like alive back then. I mean, not alive. I was alive, but I wasn't like a grown-up. I was just a kid.
So it's more
I
like
grew up
nostalgia. It's
Well, I just think,
nostalgia for childhood.
Like being a woman must have been so much easier. Like they weren't really into shaving back then, I don't think.
Ooh.
Are we talking about the same 70s music
I think
that
thinking
every
about-
other song was about being with an underage girl?
Yeah.
Same.
Lord, I was
Ramblin'
born a
Man?
Ramblin' Man.
Are we, this is what we're
Christine
doing?
16.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that back then, by the way, if the 70s, if those people were still alive, they'd all be Me Too'd.
Oh,
Yeah.
all of them, yeah.
Because I mean, their songs were bragging that they were underage.
One of the greatest songs of the 70s, it's on the cover of the Rolling Stone by Dr. Hook.
Yeah.
He goes, we have a little teenage blue-eyed groupie who does anything we say.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
that's an actual confession.
Yeah, see,
You know.
that would hold up in a court
And,
of
and
law.
by the way, don't Google that lyric at work.
Yes. I guess I have to say, I'm going to be different and go to the 2000s.
Ooh.
Because that was the kind of the birth of like electronica.
Okay.
Remember, that was when that kind of came in. But
Yeah.
I'm lying. It's really the 70s.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Attaboy.
Do we have time? Woo! Okay. All right. Wait. Okay. How about this? If you were a ghost, who would you haunt? Julie, who would you haunt?
Oh God, I don't know. Biden. I would haunt Joe Biden, and I would creepily give him a little bit of a taste of his own medicine, like whisper in his ear while he's trying to give a speech, just to further confuse him. I'm listening.
You gotta be careful of that. He could flip it on you and start doing it to you because he's dead too.
Yeah, you cannot haunt a dead
Can't
person.
put a dead guy.
Cyrus?
Who would I haunt? Which baby mama? I don't know. So that's where my money went? That's where my money went? Who's that? No, I wouldn't haunt anybody, man. I would just go away, you know?
I would just go away. That's true.
Leave. I'm dead. I'm going. I'm leaving. I'm gonna go. You know what? I'm gonna haunt a seat of all my favorite sports teams. Just gonna sit. Someone sits. Get up. Oh my God, that courtside seat with the floating beer is haunted.
That's the point.
That's right, Dagan.
That is
haunt a place where you'd like to be.
No, I would haunt all the ex-boyfriends I currently have hexes on right now.
Let a TurboTax full-service expert do your taxes as soon as today.
Jordan Peterson, you've said that men need to, quote, grow the hell up. Tell me why.
Well, because there's nothing uglier than an old infant. There's nothing good about it. People who don't grow up don't find the sort of meaning in their life that sustains them through difficult times, and they're certain to encounter difficult times. And they're left bitter and resentful and without purpose and adrift and hostile and resentful and vengeful and arrogant and deceitful and of no use to themselves and of no use to anyone else and no partner for a woman, and there's nothing in it that's good.
So you say, I mean, that sounds pretty bad. You're saying
It's
there's a
bad.
crisis of masculinity? I mean, what do you do about it?
You help people understand why it's necessary and important for them to grow up and adopt responsibility. Why that isn't a shake your finger and get your act together sort of thing. Why it's more like a delineation of the kind of destiny that makes life worth living. I've been telling young men, but it's not. I wasn't specifically aiming this message at young men to begin with. It just kind of turned out that way.
And it's mostly, you admit, it's mostly men listening. I mean,
It
90%
is.
of your audiences are men,
Well, it's
right?
about 80% on YouTube, which is YouTube is a male domain primarily, so it's hard to tell how much of it is because YouTube is male and how much of it is because of what I'm saying. But what I've been telling young men is that there's an actual reason why they need to grow up, which is that they have something to offer. You know, that people have within them this capacity to set the world straight, and that's necessary to manifest in the world, and that also doing so is where you find the meaning that sustains you in life.
So what's gone wrong then?
Oh God, all sorts of things have gone wrong. I don't think that young men hear words of encouragement. Some of them never in their entire lives, as far as I can tell. That's what they tell me. And the fact that the words that I've been speaking, the YouTube lectures that I've done and put online, for example, have had such a dramatic impact is an indication that young men are starving for this sort of message, because like, why in the world would they have to derive it from a lecture on YouTube? You know, they're not being taught that it's important to develop yourself.
But does it bother you that your audience is predominantly male? Isn't that a bit divisive?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it's no more divisive than the fact that YouTube is primarily male and Tumblr is
Well, that's pretty
primarily
divisive,
female.
isn't
Well,
it?
Tumblr is primarily female.
But you're just saying that's the way it is.
Well, I'm not saying anything. It's just an observation that that's the way it is. There's plenty of women that are watching my lectures and coming to my talks and buying my books. It's just the majority of them happen to be men.
What's in it for the women, though?
Well, what's the partner you want? You want an overgrown child? Or do you want someone to contend with that's going to help you and that
So
you
you're
can
saying
rely on?
women have some sort of duty to sort of help fix the crisis of masculinity?
It depends on what they want. No, I mean, it's exactly how I laid it out. Like, women deeply want men who are competent and powerful. And I don't mean power in that they can exert tyrannical control over others. That's not power. That's just corruption. Power is competence. And why in the world would you not want a competent partner? Well, I know why, actually. You can't dominate a competent, powerful partner. So
You're
if you
saying
want
women
domination,
want to dominate. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'd say women who have had their relationships impaired, their relationships with men impaired, and who are afraid of such relationships will settle for a weak partner because they can dominate, but it's a suboptimal solution.
Do you think that's what a lot of women are doing?
I think there's a substantial minority of women who do that, and I think it's very bad for them. They're very unhappy. It's very bad for their partners, although their partners get the advantage of not having to take any responsibility.
But what gives you the right to say that? I mean, maybe that's how women want their relationships, those women. I mean, you're making these vast generalizations.
I'm a clinical psychologist.
Right, so you're saying you've done your research and women are unhappy dominating men.
I didn't say they were unhappy dominating men. I said it was a bad long-term solution.
Okay, you said it was making them miserable.
Yes, yes. And it depends on the time frame. I mean, there's intense pleasure in momentary domination. That's why people do it all the time. But it's no formula for a successful long-term relationship. That's reciprocal. Right? Any long-term relationship is reciprocal, virtually by definition. So,
let me put a quote to you from the book, where you say there are whole disciplines in universities forthrightly hostile towards men. These are the areas of study dominated by the postmodern stroke neo-Marxist claim that Western culture in particular is an oppressive structure created by white men to dominate and exclude women. But then I want to put
minorities too.
Okay, sure. But I want to put to you that here in the UK, for example, let's take that as an example, the gender pay gap stands at just over 9%. You've got women at the BBC recently saying that the broadcaster is illegally paying them less than men to do the same job. You've got only 7 women running the top FTSE 100 companies.
Yeah.
So it seems to a lot of women that they're still being dominated and excluded, to quote your words back to you.
It does seem that way, but multivariate analysis of the pay gap indicates that it doesn't exist.
But that's just not true, is it? I mean, that 9% pay gap, that's a gap between median hourly earnings between men and women.
But there's
that exists.
Yeah, but there's multiple reasons for that. One of them is gender, but it's not the only reason. Like if you're a social scientist worth your salt, you never do a univariate analysis. Like you say, well, women in aggregate are paid less than men. Okay, well, then we break it down by age, we break it down by occupation, we break it down by interest, we break it down by personality.
But you're saying basically it doesn't matter if women aren't getting to the top, because that's what's skewing that gender pay gap, isn't it? You're saying, well, that's just a fact of life. Women aren't necessarily going to get to the top.
No, I'm not saying it doesn't matter either.
You're saying
I'm saying there are multiple reasons for it.
Yeah, but those reasons, why should women put up with those reasons? Why should women be content
I'm not
not
saying
to
that
get
they
to
should
the top?
put up with it. I'm saying that the claim that the wage gap between men and women is only due to sex is wrong, and it is wrong. There's no doubt about that. The multivariate analysis have been done. So I can give you an example.
You keep on talking about multivariate analysis.
Let me give you an example.
I'm saying that 9% pay gap exists.
Yeah.
That's a gap between men and women. I'm not saying why it exists, but it exists. Now, if you're a woman, that seems pretty unfair.
You have to say why it exists.
But do you agree that it's unfair? If you're a woman...
Not necessarily.
And on average, you're getting paid 9% less than a man. That's not fair, is it?
It depends on why it's happening. I can give you an example. Okay. There's a personality trait known as agreeableness. Agreeable people are compassionate and polite. And agreeable people get paid less than less agreeable people for the same job. Women are more agreeable than men.
Again, a vast generalization. Some women are not more agreeable than men.
Yes, that's true, but that's right. And some women get paid more than men.
So you're saying that by and large, women are too agreeable to get the pay rises they deserve?
No, I'm saying that that's one component of a multivariate equation that predicts salary. It accounts for maybe 5% of the variance, something like that.
So surely
you need about another 20. We need about another 18 factors, one of which is gender. And there is prejudice, there's no doubt about that, but it accounts for a much smaller proportion of the variance in the pay gap than the radical feminists claim.
Okay, so rather than denying the pay gap exists, which is what you did at the beginning of this conversation, shouldn't you say to women, rather than being agreeable and not asking for a pay rise, go and ask for a pay rise? Make yourself disagreeable with your boss.
Oh, definitely, there's that. But I also didn't deny it existed. I denied it existed because of gender.
Okay.
Because I'm very, very, very careful with my words.
So the pay gap exists, you accept that, but you're saying I mean, the pay gap between men and women exists. You're saying it's not because of gender, it's because women are too agreeable to ask for pay rises. So make
One
them,
of the reasons.
Okay, one of the reasons. So why not get them to ask for a pay rise?
I've
Wouldn't
done
be a
that.
fairer
I've done
way of
that
proceeding?
many, many times in my career.
And they just
I've
don't?
counseled. Oh, they do it all the time. You can. It's so. One of the things that you do as a clinical psychologist is assertiveness training. So you might say, often you treat people for anxiety, you treat them for depression, and maybe the next most common category after that would be assertiveness training. And so I've had many, many women, extraordinarily confident women, in my clinical consulting practice, and we put together strategies for their career development that involve continual pushing, competing for higher wages, and often tripled their wages within a 5-year period. Teaching
you
them how to
celebrate that?
negotiate. Of course.
So
Of
do
course.
you agree that you would be happy if that pay gap was eliminated completely? Because that's all the radical feminists are saying.
It would depend on how it was eradicated and how the disappearance of it was measured.
You're saying if
Things
it's
you
at the
can't- you
cost
can't-
of men, that's a problem.
Oh, there's all sorts of things that it could be at the cost of. It could even be at the cost of women's own interests. So,
Because they might not be happy if they get equal pay.
no, because it might interfere with other things that are causing the pay gap that women are choosing to do.
Like having children.
Well, or choosing careers that actually happen to be paid less, which women do a lot of.
But why shouldn't women have the right to choose not to have children, or the right to choose those demanding
They
careers?
do. They can. Yeah, that's fine.
But you're saying that makes them unhappy, by and large.
I'm saying that. No, I'm not saying that. And I actually haven't said that so far. in
You're
the
saying it
program.
makes them miserable.
No, I
at the
said that
beginning.
what was making them miserable was having weak partners. That makes them miserable.
Right.
I would say that many women around the age of, I would say between 28 and 32, have a career family crisis that they have to deal with. And I think that's partly because of the foreshortened time frame that women have to contend with. Like, women have to get the major pieces of their life put together faster than men, which is also partly why men aren't under so much pressure to grow up. So because for the typical woman, she has to have her career and family in order pretty much by the time she's 35, because otherwise the options start to run out. And so that puts a tremendous amount of stress on women, especially at the end of their 20s.
I think I take issue with the idea of the typical woman, because, you know, all women are different. And that's what I want to just put another quote to you from the book.
Well,
You
they're
say,
different in some ways and the same in others.
Okay, you say women become more vulnerable when they have children.
Oh,
And
yes.
you talked in one of your YouTube interviews about crazy harpy sisters. So, simple question. Is gender equality a myth in your view? Is that something that's just never going to happen?
It depends on what you mean by equality. You know,
Being
if you
treated
mean
fairly,
men and women,
getting the same opportunities.
Now we can open the time ways to the past.
fairly, we could get to a point where people were treated fairly or more fairly. I mean, people are treated pretty fairly in Western culture already, but we can.
Well, they're
improve
really
that.
not, though, are they? I mean, otherwise, why
depends.
would there only be 7 women running FTSE 100 companies in the UK? Why would there still be a pay gap, which we've
Oh, well,
discussed
that's
at length?
easy. It's easy
Why
to
are
answer
women
that
at the BBC saying that they're getting paid illegally less than men to do the same job?
Well,
That's not fair,
Well,
is
let's
it?
go to the first question. Those are complicated questions. Seven women. Repeat that one. There's
7
only
women running the top FTSE 100 companies in the UK.
Well, the
I mean,
first
that's not
question
fair.
might be, why would you want to do that?
Why would a man want to do it? I
Well,
mean, it's a lot of money.
there's
It's an interesting
There's a
job.
certain
you know?
number of men, although not that many, who are perfectly willing to sacrifice virtually all of their life to the pursuit of a high-end career. So they'll work. These are men that are very intelligent. They're usually very, very conscientious. They're very driven. They're very high energy. They're very healthy. And they're willing to work 70 or 80 hours a week, non-stop, specialized at one thing to get to the top.
So you're saying women are just more sensible. They don't want that 'cause it's not a nice life.
I'm saying that's part of it, definitely. And so I work
So you
for...
don't think there are barriers in their way that prevent them getting to the top
Oh,
of
there
those
are some
companies?
barriers, yeah, like men, for example. I mean, to get to the top of any organization is an incredibly competitive enterprise. And the men that you're competing with are simply not going to roll over and say, please take the position.
So let me come back to my
absolute
question.
all-out warfare.
Is gender equality a myth?
I don't know what you mean by the question. Men and women aren't the same, and they won't be the same. That doesn't mean they can't be treated fairly.
Is gender equality desirable?
If it means equality of outcome, then almost certainly it's undesirable. That's already been demonstrated in Scandinavia. Because in
What do you mean
Scandinavia,
by that? equality of outcome is undesirable?
Well, men and women won't sort themselves into the same categories if you leave them alone to do it of their own accord. We've already seen that in Scandinavia. It's 20 to 1 female nurses to male, something like that. It might not be quite that extreme. And approximately the same male engineers to female engineers. And that's a consequence of the free choice of men and women in the societies that have gone farther than any other societies to make gender equality the purpose of the law. Those are ineradicable differences. You can eradicate them with tremendous social pressure and tyranny, but if you leave men and women to make their own choices, you will not get equal outcomes.
Right, so you're saying that anyone who believes in equality, whether you call them feminists, call them whatever you want to call them, should basically give up because it ain't gonna happen.
Only if they're aiming at equality of outcome.
So you're saying give people equality of opportunity, that's fine.
Not only fine, it's eminently desirable for everyone, for individuals and for society.
But still women aren't going to make it, that's what you're really
It
saying.
depends on your measurement techniques. They're doing just fine in medicine. In fact, there are far more female physicians than there are male physicians. There are lots of disciplines that are absolutely dominated by women. Many, many disciplines, and they're doing great. So
let me put something else to you from the book. You say the introduction of the equal pay for equal work argument immediately complicates even salary comparison beyond practicality for one simple reason. Who decides what work is equal? It's not possible. So the simple question is, do you believe in equal pay?
Well, I made the argument there. It's like, depends
so you don't believe in equal
pay? No, I'm not saying that at all.
Because a lot of people listening to you will just say, I mean, are we going back to the dark ages?
That's because they're actually not listening. They're
I'm
just
listening very
projecting
carefully, and I'm
think.
hearing you basically saying women need to just accept they're never going to make it on equal terms, equal outcomes is how you defined it.
No, I didn't
If I was
say
a young
that.
woman watching that, I would go, well, I might as well just go and play with my Cindy dolls and give up trying at school because I'm not going to get the top job I want. Because there's someone sitting there saying it's not possible and it's not desirable, it's going to make you miserable.
Desirable. That's what I said. It's a bad social goal. I didn't say that women shouldn't be striving for the top or anything like that, because I don't believe that for a second.
Striving for the top, but you're going to put all those hurdles in their way, as has been in their way for centuries, and that's fine. You're saying that's fine.
No, I really
the patriarchal system is just
that's
fine.
Silly. I do. I think that's silly. I really do. I mean, look at your situation. You're hardly unsuccessful.
Yeah, and I have battled quite hard to get where I've got to.
Good.
So that's okay. Battling is good. This is all about the fight.
It's inevitable.
But you talk about men fighting. I mean, let me just put another thing to you from the book.
Why
You're saying
you have to battle for a high-quality position?
Well, I notice in your book you talk about real conversations between men containing, quote, an underlying threat of physicality.
Oh, there's no doubt about that.
What about real conversations between women? Is that something, or are we sort of too amenable and reasonable?
No, it's just that the domain of physical conflict is sort of off limits to me.
Well, you just said that I fought to get where I've got.
Yeah, but
what does that make me?
Well,
a proxy man or something?
I don't imagine that you. Yeah, to some degree, I suspect you're not very agreeable.
So that's the thing. Successful women. I'm not very agreeable.
Right.
But
I've noticed that actually in this conversation.
At least,
and I'm sure it served your career well.
Successful women, though, basically have to wear the trousers in your view. They have to sort of become men to succeed. Is what you're saying.
Well, if they're going
I've had to fight to succeed.
If
therefore,
they're going to
I'm
compete
an honorary
against
man.
men, certainly masculine traits are going to be helpful. I mean, one of the things I do in my counseling practice, for example, when I'm consulting with women who are trying to advance their careers, is to teach them how to negotiate and to be able to say no and to not be easily pushed around and to be formidable. And you need to, if you're going to be successful, you need to be smart, conscientious, and tough.
Well, here's a radical idea. Why don't the bosses adopt the male bosses, shall we say, adopt some female traits so that women don't have to fight and get their sharp elbows out for the pay rises? It's just accepted if they're doing the same job, they get the